Welcome to the HOA Real Talk podcast. Real Talk is for homeowners and board members of homeowners associations. Most HOA podcasts are from attorneys or property managers. Real Talk is by a homeowner and board member and focuses on helping homeowners navigate living in a deed-restricted community. It also helps board members understand and become better at their role as a volunteer and leader of the community. The HOA Real Talk show is brought to you by Excellence in Action Podcasting. So let's be about it and get this show started. Please welcome the host of Real Talk, Mike Sancho.
Thank you for that introduction, Grace, and welcome back everyone to HOA Real Talk. Today we're going to talk about how property or association managers conduct on-site inspections. But before we get into it and before we introduce our special guest, I want to do a quick recap of season 1. It was my first go around doing a podcast for homeowners associations. And as you know, if you're a listener, you know that I'm a board member of my association and a homeowner. And the podcast is based on my perceptions, my viewpoints, serving as a board member homeowner, because all the podcasts that I've researched came from the perspective of property managers or HOA attorneys or property management companies. I really didn't find a podcast that was out there for homeowners that came from a homeowner's perspective and from a board member's perspective. So I want to introduce a friend of mine and someone who I've worked with closely over the last couple of years, Teresa Fisher. Teresa, welcome to HOA Real Talk.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's great to be here.
I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. Before we get into your bio and what have you, what were your impressions of season 1 of HOA Real Talk?
I thought they were great. It helps me as a property manager to see how homeowners and board members view things from their perspective. I see it from the business side, so it's really good to get that insight. So I thought it was really helpful for me in my profession to understand how it is that a homeowner or a board member views what's happening in their community.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I guess I hit the mark at least with one portion of my audience. So I hope I can continue hitting the mark this season. So enough about last season. Teresa, tell us about yourself. Tell us, how you got involved with being a property manager, how long you've been doing it. Give us your background. Tell us your story.
Oh, well, let's see. Well, I have a very diverse background. But suffice it to say, I have been in, on, or around real estate or property in some way, shape, or form since, I'm going to date myself, the 80s. So I've worked for general contractors as a project coordinator for large-scale planned urban developments, or known as PUDs, which is what most HOA and condominium associations are. So I transitioned from that to being in architecture, where I was the office manager and helped coordinate some of those projects from their design phase. From that, I went on to being a full-time realtor and mortgage broker, and remained in that until the market previously hit rock bottom, shall we say, in 2007, 2008. So it was an easy transition for me to say, okay, well, there was a property manager's position or a property administrator's position that opened up with a private country club. And I got that job. And from there, I worked there for about 9 years. And during that time, I transitioned to the administrator for the whole community, which was another way of saying I was the assistant property manager.
Okay.
So at that time, I became a full licensed community association manager. So about 14 years ago, I guess, I've been being a manager. And then at some point, I decided to step away from the private sector community and become what they call a portfolio manager, which means that I manage multiple properties at one time. So, and I love doing that. It's an exciting thing for me. So that's kind of how I got into being a property manager. It seemed like the logical succession fit.
So suffice to say that as a property manager, you have a wealth of experience in this whole type of industry, from, you know, the viewpoint of being involved with PUDs to selling the properties and now managing the properties. That's a wealth of knowledge. And I cannot imagine how someone with that much experience could have any issues managing properties and being a portfolio manager, because you bring such a wide perspective.
Well, there's always those unique perspectives that you just don't know are coming from other people. But yeah, I'm unique somewhat in my field because I do come with a diverse background, because since I have a construction knowledge, you know, when we have construction projects, I usually have an idea of what is needed moving forward.
Talk to the audience about the importance of doing on-site inspections.
Well, there's a twofold purpose and reason for doing on-site inspections. First and foremost, you have a set of governing documents in any HOA. And those governing documents, specifically your declarations, are also known as covenants, specifically outline what things are do's and don'ts, if you will, in a community. It sets the standard for what your developer or your first board determined was the standard for how the community should look moving forward. You also had a set of rules and regs. Rules and regs usually work with the governing documents and the declarations so that it outlines and sometimes further details specifics about a certain look or standard, such as like painting colors. You know, you can paint your house this color or that color.
So make sure we don't have
people
with purple houses.
I haven't really found any HOA that allows purple houses or pink ones, although I have seen them.
Purple with orange trim and pink doors. We don't have any of those.
No, they usually don't allow purple and pink houses and doors or red ones either. It's not a very popular color.
Okay.
But, you know, but markets change too, because I've been in this for so long that there were flamingo pink houses at one time back in the 80s. So if you can imagine that one here in Florida, but it goes with the theme sometimes. But the purpose and the reason for the inspections are, one, safety, and two, the standards.
Okay.
I think a lot of people forget that, you know, along with how your property as a homeowner looks, there's other things that you have that are amenities in the community. And those things have to be inspected on a regular basis as well. So it's not just looking at someone's home, it's also inspecting such as your pool and your pool pumps and things that run it, and your irrigation and all of the different things that are amenities in your community that have to be maintained.
Well, because we're paying dues to access those amenities, so they've got to work when I show up to use
exactly.
them, right?
And you want to make sure that those amenities are in good quality condition and that there's nothing broken or nothing that could be hazardous to you or your family. So you have to inspect them on a regular basis, especially those things that are outside. You know, here in South Florida, you have the hot sun. And so the sun does, you know, do damage to, say, playgrounds and things like that, because the plastics in them wear out.
Right.
And they break, they become fragile. So yes, those inspections are not just for aesthetics, but they're also for safety reasons.
So for my audience, from a board member's perspective and a homeowner's perspective, inspections are done for what purpose? You knew I was going to get it in there. I'm known for my tagline. And I just wanted to say that the reason we do inspections from my perspective is what? To keep the hood looking good and property values high. Right. So I had to get that in there, folks. I got to get my tagline in there. So
well, and that's a true statement too. Because without talking to homeowners about keeping those standards, the hood doesn't look good.
That's right.
If you let it go.
That's right.
So
and I talked about that in season 1. I shared the story of my brother not understanding what an HOA was and him living in New York and having a atrocious neighbor in the backyard. I don't want to redo that episode, but it's so true. It's so important to understand that living in a deed restricted community keeps everyone to the same standards, and we're all sharing the beauty of our community equally. And I think that's important for everyone to understand that. So Teresa, you manage how many properties?
Right now, my portfolio consists of 3 properties, which equates to just under 1,000 units. So,
okay. Woo. So let's talk about the inspection process. How do you inspect your communities? So you get to a community. What's your process for inspecting the community? So talk to me about how inspections take place.
Well, when you first take over a property, I encourage every property manager to take a really good look at your declarations, covenants, and take a look at the rules and regulations for that community. Those are basically your guidelines, your standards for which you need to review each property when you're looking at it. When I go and I take a look at the community, specifically the homes, I use those set of standards, those guidelines, and say, okay, most properties here in South Florida require that you clean your roof. Is the roof dirty? Is it showing signs of mold or green or black mold? And is the lawn being maintained? Are the weeds being taken care of? These are all things that take away from the curb appeal of your home. And it's a perception that, okay, if it looks this bad, the rest of the community must look this bad. So your real estate values go down when these things are not properly maintained.
So how do you go about inspecting? Do you drive, walk? How do you do the actual inspection itself?
Well, that all just depends. It's kind of unique to each property, depending on the size of that property. Because I manage 3, all 3 of mine are actually different. I have one large community that I can either do the inspections via my personal vehicle or via golf carts. Some days I do it just with my vehicle. Golf cart in a large community is good for the behind the scenes work, but it takes a little longer than it would be if I was in my automobile.
So you're doing drive-bys. Are you looking at when you're conducting an inspection, are you looking at from what you can see from street view, or do you do street view and on property inspections? Meaning, do you go behind someone's home to see and inspect the property from the backside of the house?
Not typically. You view it from the street side. There are reasons and times when, yes, I will go to the back portion of the yard. Those kinds of inspections, when you do the rear yard, can take a longer period of time. Because I've found over the years, if I don't tell someone I'm walking on their property in their home, it tends to scare them. So it takes that time to make that initial contact and say, I need to go back behind here to look at XYZ.
Gotcha.
So, contractually, typically it's always from the street side. But in my larger communities, I do have a golf cart, so I can always use the golf cart to access the back. And there are times when I need to. My one particular community does have ponds behind each one of them. So there are times when I have to inspect the ponds to make sure, and again, this goes back to that safety thing, make sure that it's properly being treated for algae and certain wildlife issues that you have when you have bodies of water. So yes, I will go back behind them and look at that way. Like I said, every community is different. I have another community that's relatively small. It is only 1 street long. And I'll be honest with you, I walk that one because it's my exercise for the day. Sometimes you just need to get out and walk. Those I look at from the back too, but it's a different community. So the backs are really simple because I just make literally a circle around the whole community. And I'm contracted to do that. That's what that community wants. So they want you to look at their backs. the back side of their property as well. So it's dependent on the property, but typically it's always the front from the street side.
So street view, front of the house. When you're going out on inspections, right? You mentioned, for example, in Florida, most of the communities, you have to have a clean roof because of the sunshine and all that mold building up on there.
Yes.
When you go out to do your site inspections, do you go out, for example, do you go out today and say, today I'm going to inspect roofs? Or do you go out and say, I'm just going to drive by, street view, if something catches my eye, then I'm going to take a closer look? How do you break it down for today? I'm going to look at lawn care. Tomorrow I'm going to look at roofs. How do you go and decide what you're going to inspect?
I do not. I look at the property as a whole.
Okay.
When you first start a new community, it takes a long time to do that kind of process. Sometimes you start with that methodology by going and just looking at roofs that day or looking at the lawn that day. But and I think maybe it's just a time and a process that I've learned to do. I look at each property as a whole that day. So there's usually 5 markers basically for a property that you're really looking at that are pointedly something that the association does or does not want, which is like a roof, or your painting is peeling, or your landscaping is not in order, or your driveway is filthy, or your parking vehicles or utility vehicles or things like that the association doesn't allow.
Okay.
So in the beginning, when you have a larger property, you just look for the one specific item, because it can be pretty overwhelming if the property hasn't been properly maintained prior to you coming on board. But once you get that down pat, it's pretty simple process. It's a relatively quick process, because you can see the whole home and you can see how it looks and whether or not it needs to be maintained. And then, of course, when the property has been properly maintained, it's really simple, because like the roofs, for instance, roofs here in South Florida, depending on how many trees a property has around it, usually you only have to clean the roof like once every 2 years. Right. So it's pretty simple. If everybody's cleaned their roof in that one street, it's pretty simple. You can, the roof isn't part of that inspection anymore.
Gotcha.
So, other than a brief, oh, okay, nothing's happened to it since I saw it the day before. So
you have a process. You
Yes.
learn your community, you understand that community, the ins and outs and when things tend to happen or not happen. And you use that knowledge to your advantage and do your inspections. So you're on site, you're doing your inspections, and you find someone with a violation. What happens?
Here in Florida, you have a set of statutory requirements that you must follow when you issue a violation. The first violation is what we call a courtesy notice, and it will say courtesy first notice. So it is to let a homeowner know that this violation exists, and it gives them a specific period of time with which to remedy that violation. Once that period of time is ended, of course, a second inspection is merited to make sure that they complied. Because I'm on one particular property, my largest property, I'm on there daily. So when I go around, they may have cleared that violation before the time, or they may not have. If they didn't clear the violation, then at my second inspection, we send them what we call a second notice, and it gives them a shorter period of time, typically, with which to remedy the situation. If they still did not comply or didn't contact us to say, I'm trying to, but with many homeowners, and here in South Florida, we have, a manpower shortage. So getting someone sometimes to take care of that specific violation sometimes can take a period of time. So we try to work with the homeowner.
But you're trying to see that the homeowner is making an effort to get it resolved, right?
Yes. So I encourage homeowners, please contact your management company if you are trying to comply, because you'll probably find most property managers will say, okay, we'll document it. You are trying to make the effort to get it taken care of. but you can't always schedule a contractor within, a 2-week period of time if that's how long you get to remedy it.
But I want to be clear to the audience.
Mhm.
I'm going to put my board member's hat on for
Okay.
a second. And I want to be clear. When we say that you're making the effort, please verify that you're making the effort, because I can easily say, well, I've contacted, multiple vendors to power wash my roof, but nobody's returning my phone call or things of that nature. Just say, hey, I've documented, do a screenshot on your phone. Or if you're emailing contractors saying, hey, I've emailed contractors, they're not replying back, because anybody can say, yeah, I'm trying to remedy it, because people just want to not admit they have a violation. Number one. Number two is there's some folks, not the majority of people, over 97% to 99% of the owners want to do the right thing and follow the rules and make sure their property is looking good.
That's
But
right.
there's a handful of folks that, no, not me. And, they become Karens and Kens. They don't want to hear it. And so I'm going to say it. They lie. They say, yeah, I've tried to contact, nobody's returning my call. Just document it. Show us, good faith. It works both ways, right? If we're trying to work with you, try to work with us. That way, we're not having people abuse the system, because people will take advantage of systems. We know that to be true. So I just wanted to, state that from a board member's perspective.
I do find, though, Mike, that if a homeowner calls us to say that they're actually trying, they truly are actually trying.
Right.
It is those who are not trying that don't bother to call to tell us that. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, it doesn't happen very often that someone really calls and says, yeah, I'm trying, and then doesn't. But again, we always preface it with, okay, when your time period is up, we will do an inspection and get an update from you about where you're at.
Gotcha.
Because even though, they get a long enough period of time to actually try to make contact with a contractor, we do find that those who have contacted us will tell us when it's time for that second notice to go out, that, yeah, I finally got a guy, but he's 6 weeks out before he can take care of cleaning my roof.
Perfect.
So we will document that, okay. And they usually we ask who the contractor is. So we will document that they've contacted us. This is the contractor, and he's got 6 weeks before he can do it.
But I think that's important to share with folks, because now what you're seeing is that, a property manager, an association manager is really working with homeowners, and not just there to issue violations and hit you over the head with notices. And, there's a working relationship that we're working together to achieve a common goal. Because from a board member's perspective, if the violation is not remedied and all the time goes through, at some point in time, there's going to be a fine issued.
Yes.
I'm telling you, as a board member, I don't want the money from a fine. I prefer the violation to be repaired, fix the issue, remedy the violation. That's more important. What good is it if we fine you? And I know in Florida, we can do a max of $100 a day, not to exceed $1,000 in total. So if you have a dirty roof and you get the $1,000 fine and you don't pay it, what good is that for the community? I don't care about the fine. The money means nothing. Your roof is still dirty, and it's an eyesore coming into the community. We want the violation remedied. And that's why the property manager, at the behest, and I got to make this clear, at the behest of the board, conducts inspections and follows through and holds people accountable in accordance with the governing documents. Because it's not the property manager or association manager deciding this is what's going to happen. It's at the behest of the board, correct?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
So,
and you make a good point. The property manager answers to only the board president, and it has to be that way, because
what? They don't answer the homeowners directly?
No,
You're kidding me.
Shocking, isn't it?
Oh my goodness.
And it's trying to help people.
You don't work for me?
I've been asked that many a times. But you can only have one chief, because otherwise, for a property manager, it becomes very confusing. Okay, one person saying this, one person saying that. I try to, in the very beginning, get with my board and say, this is my management style. And I ask them, what are your goals for the community, and what are your goals that you would like to achieve with my help, with my assistance? I'm here to help. That's why you hire a professional in anything, whether
So
it's property management or you take your car to the mechanic. You want to make sure that the end goal is the same, and it's no different.
let me interject real quick and make this clear to homeowners. All those people that like to go around and say, you work for me, I pay your salary. If you are not the person responsible, or let me rephrase that. If you don't have the authority as an individual or part of a collective group like a board to hire and terminate that individual, you are not their boss. They don't work for you. Let me clear that up, right? So in your case, you work for a management company.
I do.
And the management company is your employer, and we contract the management company. So,
Correct.
And that's what happens in majority, if not all, of the associations and HOAs. That's how it typically functions. There are HOAs that, in communities that they hire their own private property manager, association manager, things of that nature. But, it's majority of it is through a property management company. Now, I want to ask you a couple of things, Teresa. When you do inspections, do you take pictures to verify violations?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I do. We attach the photo to the notice that we send the first time, so that the homeowner understands what it is we see. Because, we're very conscious and very aware of the fact that most people don't go home, pull in their driveway and go, oh, let me look at my roof today. They don't. The courtesy notice is just to say, hey, did you know, or did you realize, it's just a reminder. These things need to be addressed.
Good.
And most people go, oh gosh, I didn't look at my roof today. I mean, I'm a property manager. I can tell you how often I look at my roof, which is none. I mean, every now and then I give it okay, is it a looking good? But no, we don't. You become.
I look at my roof as a board member. I look at my roof every day when I pull into the driveway, because as board members, I think are hated just as much as some property managers, and I need to make sure there's not a sniper on top of the roof ready to take me out. Just joking, folks. Just joking. You know me, I like to kid around. There are some associations and some communities, and with your wealth of experience, have you come across this, where they have a committee that goes around and does the inspections? Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have. I don't personally, and this is just a personal thing, I don't find that works well. Mostly because most of the committee members, while they're willing to help, and that is awesome, they're not trained to see all of those things. And everybody has a difference of opinion at what level that violation is. Like, I've worked with the committee before and did some training with a couple of committees about such things. But what I think is a dirty roof, Joe may say, oh, it's really not that bad. It's on borderline.
Right.
Well, it is either dirty or it is not dirty. And I also, as the professional in this, I don't have a personal relationship with anyone who lives in the home. So I see all homes as just addresses. That way it detaches me from any personal thing, because, when you're having community members help you with these, sometimes their personality or dislike of another person is part of that. And I have to trust. Yeah, it becomes personal. For me, it isn't personal. It's just about, these are the standards and these are the rules. That way I don't discriminate against anyone. If I see you as an address, then that's all that is. It's an address. If I'm dealing with you as an individual homeowner, that's one thing. It's one-on-one. But when it comes to the violations, it's just about an address. So at the end of the day, I don't socialize with people who are in the community. I don't, there's a friendship there with some, but you can't mix those two things together. And committees tend to want to get emotionally attached to some of it. And that can't be, because then the association is on the hook for the discrimination that may occur because of it. So I don't find working with committees for inspections works well.
So when you have that problem homeowner, you're not dreaming, having nightmares of the problem homeowner, you're having nightmares about the address.
Yes.
Pretty much, right? So let's move on to, there's the other aspect of it, that in order to keep the hood looking good and property values high, communities bring in vendors, whether it's lawn care, pool servicing, whatever it is. How do you make sure they're doing their job? What's your inspection routine to stay on top of it? Because I'm going to share something with the audience, and I think I did in season 1 in 2016, 17, when I was previously on my HOA board. When I became chair in 2017, we took a hard look at all of our contracts and all of our vendors. And, we have an irrigation vendor, and I was seeing that the person was on site every day and he never had any marks on his knees, on his pants. They were never wet. They were never dirty. How do you work with irrigation and water and you don't have a grass stain, a wet stain, a wet mark on your pants? And I was like, well, wait a minute. Is he really doing any work? So how do you go about inspecting the vendors to make sure they're living up to their contract?
And that's a good question, Mike. Sometimes it's hard, depending on the size of the community. Sometimes it's not. Like you said, the irrigation guys, they should be on schedule for days that they're supposed to be on site. And you're right, they should be wet sometimes, and they should have some grass stains here and there if they're actually doing the job. You will begin to notice a pattern too, because you'll get calls from people if the association handles the irrigation, not for a particular individual at all, but if an association handles it, you'll start getting calls by saying, my grass is dying, or it's not looking good, or what's wrong with it? Because we're very specific with the company that I work for. We work on work orders. So that also gives me a way to track that contractor. Did that contractor go there? Did they do the job? We require a notification that they completed that work order so that we can track it. We can also follow up with a homeowner and say, was there any problem? Did they fix this? Is it still functioning? Is it working right? So also you can tell by, are your pump systems being taken care of? Are they notifying you that there's something wrong with the pumps or the pump stations or anything like that? So you'll know if an irrigation guy isn't working. Now your landscaper, that's another story. Landscapers are an obvious one. If they're not doing their job, you'll see that there's weeds there and grass there, and hedges aren't trimmed. They also are required to provide a schedule for when they're doing their services, because excuse me, trimming doesn't happen every time they're on site. It typically happens in the winter months, like every 5 weeks, 6 weeks, because it's not needed when things are more dormant. But in the summertime, when everything grows here, they're supposed to be trimming once a month for a trim cycle. You'll know if they didn't trim. You'll see the limbs, you'll see the hedges are growth patterns are different in sections. So it's something that you don't be obvious to you.
But it's something where, for example, you'll start seeing it, or you have homeowners reaching out to you that then you say, okay, let me follow up. Let me look into this. And then you start.
And it's not just that though. You when you're out on property on a regular basis, you'll look at those things. You'll notice those things. You'll see them. So it's not just having the homeowners call and everything else. You'll see them. I mean, they'll be obvious to the trained eye. Gotcha.
Two more questions and then we'll start wrapping this up. You're out on property. You're out doing your drive-through. You're walking in that one community that's 100 feet long. You got the golf cart in the other one. Are you ever concerned about safety?
You mean for myself or for the community? Oh, for myself. Yes, there are sometimes when there are concerns for safety. People have different personalities, and those personalities can sometimes be hostile. And I find that property managers are usually the target for their anger, because they have a perceived idea that somehow they've been wronged or something hasn't been managed well, and they get angry. And, with the advent of social media and stuff, you're in the hot seat as a property manager. People can come up and they do get hostile sometimes. I've been real fortunate because I have been educated in diffusing situations. So that does help me in some of those kinds of situations. But, people can take it further. I have been threatened, and I've had my vehicle published on social media to say, okay, she's around, watch out for her, that kind of thing. I'm there to help. I'm not there to hurt or to make enemies. I'm just doing the job that I was contracted to do. And so there are days when, yes, you're mindful of it. You're more mindful. If I'm in a golf cart, I am more mindful that I'm fully exposed to someone. But I'm also open on the other side of that, because I want people to come up to me. I want them to ask me the questions, because I feel that an informed person is much less likely to get angry about a situation if they understand what is happening. It's there to try to, as you say, make things look good in the hood. You want to keep that level up. And I think most people, as a general rule, do know that. But yeah, there are safety concerns that a property manager needs to be mindful of.
Final question, and then I'll let you do some shout outs or whatever you want folks to know. But the final question is there ever a time where, as the property manager, you back off inspections or become a little lax? Is there ever a time that you function with that mentality?
There is a certain season that I try to get people to take care of their property generally before the month of December. And by that, I mean, I understand as a property manager and as a person, the holidays are coming, and to allocate a sum of money to get your roof cleaned and stuff, I try to make sure that everybody knows they need the roof cleaned before the holidays come. I don't necessarily slack off. I'm always out there looking. If there is immediate need to be addressed, then I will. But I try to lessen my violation notices during the holiday season, so that people can not have to worry about taking care of their families or taking care of their families and not taking care of something on the outside of their home.
So you don't want them to be sitting there with the scale and saying, holiday Christmas gifts, roof cleaning, right. Christmas gifts, roof cleaning.
Right. And so I try to make sure that, by September, October, that people know they need to get it cleaned. And that way the month of December, they're not having to worry, oh my gosh, I might get a violation for this and I can't buy kids Christmas gifts. So we try to manage it that way. So because I'm human too, I try to make sure that people know that. And I think over the years, people have learned to appreciate that it's not happening in the month of December. And it's not to say that if they violate something else, like I have a property that you can't park on the street at night, we'll still take care of those violations. But the big ticket items we try to address before the holidays.
So you heard it here first, right? Breaking news. Property and association managers are also human. You heard that here first on HOA Real Talk. Well,
yeah.
Teresa, I mean, this has been very informative. As a board member and as host of the show, I've learned a lot today. One thing that sticks out that I did not know, that when you're out on the property doing inspections, you're also looking at safety issues such as algae and ponds and those type of things. I'd never realized that. I always thought, okay, the inspections were make sure everything's looking real good. Safety was never a thought in my mind when you were doing inspections. So thank you for sharing your experience and your knowledge with us today. The floor is yours. Is there anything you want to say to someone, a shout out? Anything you want to promote? The floor is yours.
Well, if you're in South Florida, and I'll do the, always look for Campbell Property Management. That's who I work for, and I think they're a great firm and can offer you great customer service. And I think I'll end with, please, if you're a homeowner or a board member, you hired a professional to help you along the process to achieve having your neighborhood standards being taken care of and people complying, but moreover, appreciating the value of your home as it escalates because of these things. And there's a lot more to property management than most people know or understand. But I just like to encourage people, talk with your property manager. He or she will be able to listen or willing to listen because they're there to help. They're not just there to take care of the stuff the board wants, but they're there to genuinely help you as a homeowner solve some of the solutions. We can't solve them all, but we can certainly try to help you. So I just encourage both the board and the homeowners. Listen, what are your goals? What is it that you want to achieve? That's what your property manager is there for. They will help you if they can.
Well, thank you, Teresa.
Listen, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Feedback. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on HOA Real Talk. Folks, that's a wrap for episode 1 of season 2 on inspections. But I want to remind you, it takes all of us. Take a step back and make sure you're doing whatever you can do, whether you're a property manager, a board member, or a homeowner. Do your part to do what? Keep the hood looking good and our property values high. Until the next time, be safe and be well, my friends.
The views and discussions heard on this podcasts are the opinions of the host and guests and are not to be taken as legal advice. You do not go on social media for your legal advice, so do not come to HOA Real Talk either. However, if you do go on social media for legal advice, all I can say is you're screwed.